What is up, DW Nation? Good episode of Smackdown from last night. We saw some dysfunction start to brew between Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair ahead of their tag team title match at Fastlane. And of course, with Daniel Bryan and Roman Reigns wrestling each other at Fastlane as well, we saw huge implications be added at the end of the show. So of course, I'm going to dive in. Without further ado, I am Kevin Jones, Disciples of Wrestling, and let's get down to it. So to start off the show, we start off with the Rated R Superstar. Edge is looking to cut a promo. So he talks about how he needs to address the people who've been bringing his name out of their mouth. He starts off with Roman, saying how Roman talked about that people like Edge are not meant to wrestle men like Roman. But Edge said, let's backtrack. You told me and demanded me to pick you for Mania. You wanted me to recognize you as my opponent. Well, I did. And now that I'm serious about this, you want to backtrack. And you decide to go over to Daniel Bryan instead of focusing on your Mania match. Then he said, speaking of Daniel, he said, first of all, let me remind you who I am. While you was wrestling once a week, I was wrestling 6 to 7 times a week for 4 decades. And it don't make me a part-timer because you've been wrestling a little more than me the last couple months. So Daniel Bryan comes out. And Daniel's like, what I said last week on Talking Smack wasn't even meant to offend you. He was like, if anything, I thought you would respect me as you're the ultimate opportunist, and I decided to go in business for myself. So he talks about how this might be his last Mania. So he is going to do everything he can to get in the main event spot for WrestleMania. And he tells Edge, I'm not even worried about you because you already got yours destined for the main event. So, of course, Daniel's going to do whatever he can. But Edge says, hey, bro, you lost that Elimination Chamber. Yeah, the circumstances were a little funky, but a loss is a loss. And daggone, he said, I might have run Royal Rumble, but you were in that match too. And then he said, you're better than this, Daniel, but you're not better than me. And he walks out and just leaves Daniel hurt. So the first match of the night, it is Rey Mysterio, Dominic Mysterio, and the Street Profits versus Rude and Ziggler and the Alpha Academy. Now, both teams had phenomenal chemistry with one another throughout the match. But starting off, during the entrance of the Mysterios and the Street Profits, Alpha Academy and Rude and Ziggler attacked the team and right before the commercial break. Now, after the commercial break, we see that it's Dawkins and Rude starting off. And Dawkins is actually doing more than handling his own. He is in firm control using something very shockingly, which was his athleticism. Homie was flying, moving around, which is very impressive for the big guy that he is. Now, we see the Street Profits and Dominic Mysterio have smooth tag team chemistry all up until Otis gets in. Otis takes firm control of this whole match and creating the swing and the momentum back for his tag team. Now as Dominic is in and Rude is in, we actually see Dominic hit a very, very impressive tornado DDT, setting up to tag in Dawkins once again, and we see Rude tag in Dolph Ziggler. Then of course we see Dawkins go crazy, and he sets up Montez Ford for the huge frog splash to hopefully get the win. But what we see is a Gable distraction to set up Rude nicely to knock Ford off the top turnbuckle, and we actually see after the commercial break, Ziggler has cut the ring in half and working over Montez Ford. He actually has him locked into the sleeper hold, but Ford manages to power his way all the way up to Angelo Dawkins and tags him in. But the issue was Rude came into the ring, distracting the ref, so the ref never even saw the tag. Now, we actually see eventually Ford ends up doing a nice little backflip from the reversal of the back suplex from Chad Gable. And then when Chad tries to attack him, we see Montez Ford actually do a nice little flip over top of him too to tag in Rey Mysterio. Now, both teams end up breaking this thing down as we got bodies flying everywhere. But we see Dominic and Rey Mysterio bait in Robert Roode, and they hit him with a double 619 to set up Montez Ford for the frog splash for the win. Now, before our next match, we get an interview with Kayla Braxton and Seth Rollins, where Kayla's asking Seth, of course, about Cesaro and the actions that Cesaro took a couple weeks ago when he did the little swing of a swing on Mr. Rollins. Now, Rollins is really confused. He's like, I don't even know why I'm still asked about Cesaro. I'm done with him. He's the biggest waste of potential that I've ever seen. But when Kayla Braxton actually told him about the rematch between Buddy Murphy and Cesaro, he actually seemed pretty intrigued. And right before the match, we actually see Seth Rollins come out on the stage and actually have a steel chair to sit down and actually watch the match. So, getting into our second match of the night, which is Cesaro versus Buddy Murphy. This was a dominant display. I'm sorry, I was going to say a good match, but this was very dominant. Cesaro gave this man no chance to get in offense. I mean, Buddy did get some in. You know, he hit a big knee on the outside. But other than that, Cesaro had answers for him. He hit the deadlift superplex and also hit the Cesaro swing on him. I mean, there was nothing Buddy could do. But in the middle of the Cesaro swing, we actually see Seth Rollins come in and beat this man down, hit him with 2 curb stomps. And as he's going for a third curb stomp with Cesaro's head in between the chair to just snap the man's neck, we actually see officials and referees run into the ring to stop Rollins before this even happens. Next, we see backstage Edge approach Jey Uso as Jay's walking backstage around, to nothing. And he just flats out asks Jay, hey, bro, what are you doing? He was like, I've seen the great work that you and your brother have done, and it's really brought me back to huge memories and great tag team action when him and Christian were a part of it. Cough, cough, Christian's in AEW. But we actually see Edge also call Jay the lapdog to the big dog, and really is confused why he's even on board with the whole tribal chief thing. And simply, Jey Uso looks offended. He looks over at Edge and he goes, bro, know your role and you don't need to get into my family's business. You need to enjoy yours while you still can, because Rome is going to hurt you at Mania. Now, next up, we get the KO show with his special guest being Bianca Belair and the SmackDown Women's Champion, Miss Sasha Banks. Now, as of course they get started, Sasha starts talking about Reggie. She's still doing that. So, as of course she's talking, Bianca spoke up for the nation. She spoke for the culture. She was like, hey girl, you need to get off him, stop feeding into his games, and focus. We got a tag team title match in a couple weeks. We got to focus. And then, of course, Banks is like, what you mean? I paved the way for this women evolution. Which she called herself the Michael Jordan of the women's division. And she said, Bianca, you might be the LeBron James. That she said might be. And then, of course, Bianca's like, hey, don't throw dirt on my name. I won the Royal Rumble. And, of course, Sasha jumps in and goes, that's because I wasn't in it. And then she also says, I'm going to beat Shayna Baszler and Nia Jax to become the next double champ again as 2 belts Banks going into WrestleMania at Fastlane. And, of course, this brings out Shayna Baszler inside and Nia Jax with, of course, Mr. Reginald. But this also sets up for the next match, which is Bianca Belair and Sasha Banks versus Tamina Snuka and Natalya Neidhart. So, starting off the match, we get Sasha Banks and Natalya. Sasha's doing a great job of working over Natty, all up until she gets distracted by Reggie. So, she goes outside. She comes back in after being distracted, and Natty is working and giving her the business. All up until Bianca Belair gets tagged in. Bianca gets tagged in, and she's putting in the work on Natty, hitting her with this nice speed and athleticism until Tamina gets in. Now, of course, while this is all going on, we see Tamina end up working over Belair because we saw Reggie, while Bianca went to go for this tag over Natty, we saw Reggie get on the apron to distract Belair to where Natty and Tamina then took over. But while Tamina is working over Belair, we see Reggie hop on top of the commentary table and go ahead and waltz and show all this expensive clothing that Nia Jackson bought for him. And then, of course, we see Sasha Banks get on this commentary table. And as she's confronting Mr. Reggie, Reggie runs into the ring. And then, of course, Banks chases him. And as she's still distracted with that, Natty takes her out. And then we see Tamina hit a roll-up on Miss Belair and pins Belair for the win for that tag team. Now, after the match, of course, Belair's heated. She goes up to Sasha and is like, you did it again. You keep getting distracted. You need to fix this problem. And, of course, Sasha's getting defensive. And she was like, you're the one that lost the match. You took the pinfall. It's not my fault. And she was like, it's because you keep getting distracted. And then she goes, you know what? I'm done with this. So backstage, we see these two are still bickering about Reginald. Yes, about Reggie. And then, of course, while they're still bickering, Sasha's like, I don't understand why you mad at me. You the one that told me to get rid of him. That messed up my head when she said that too. So later on, we actually see Reginald and Nia Jax talking backstage. And Reggie ends up coming up with a decision. And he was like, Nia, how about you challenge Sasha next week for the SmackDown Women's Championship? And then you can walk in with 2 championships in the Mania. Well, now it's official. Next week, we are actually getting Sasha Banks versus Nia Jax for the SmackDown Women's Championship. Now we have the return of Big E, since, of course, the attack that Apollo had on him a couple weeks ago, just throwing the steel stairs on top of Big E from inside the ring onto the ring floor. Now, of course, Big E's furious. He said it is too late to go back now. There's no apology that can fix this. It is game over. I'm coming after you. He said it's now an eye for an eye. He said, Paulo, it's not going to be enough to just ping you. I got it in you now. And he said, we ain't got to wait. I don't care about being healed. I'm ready to do this now. And as he calls him out and Apollo doesn't answer, he said, I'm worked up. I'm ready to go, even though Apollo isn't. So I'm going to have an open challenge. I had the expectation of defending this, so I'm going to. And of course, we get King Corbin to answer this, and he is in this nice dripped out suit. He, of course, talks about how even though he's not dressed to compete, he's going to be ready to go. And right before he says he's going to answer the call, Sami Zayn comes out. And Sami starts to answer this call. And, of course, these two start to bicker as well. And then Sami get real childish. Sami runs into the ring and says he challenges him. And then this opens up for Big E to hit a belly-to-belly suplex going into commercial break. But it is now official. We are getting Sami Zayn versus Big E for the Intercontinental Championship. So this match starts off with Big E in solid control. He's just taking over with power and anger at this point, all up until Sami gets a double knees up to stop Big E as he goes for a big splash in the corner. Now, once Big E gets up, he hits 2 belly-to-belly suplexes, and he misses with a big splash on the apron as he's calling for Apollo. But of course, when Sami's looking to build up momentum, Big E just answered it with a huge clothesline, setting up the big inning to retain his IC championship. Now, after the match, we actually hear Apollo's music go off, and then Big E's waiting and looking around for him. But Apollo attacks him from behind, hitting him with 2 Olympic slams, and then he goes outside the ring to grab the steel steps once again. He calls for Big E to get up. He hits him with the steel steps, and then, of course, he leaves Big E outside the ring on the floor, just laying motionless outside, and he stands up on the steel stairs, standing tall in the middle of the ring. So next up is the contract signing between Roman Reigns and Daniel Bryan for Fastlane. But as Roman Reigns sits down at the table, of course at the head, because you know he the man, he's like, second thought, nah, I'm not signing this. You don't deserve it. You just don't deserve it. So Daniel's like, hey bro, you just mad. You big mad because I was able to make the man quit that you couldn't. Your cousin, Jay, 2 times you couldn't make this man quit. But I did it with 1 match. And then he was like, so I guess that makes me the head of the table. I should call myself the tribal chief. So Roman's worked up and he signs the contract. And now that, of course, he signed the contract, Daniel looks at him and he was like, now this is my message directly to you. I'm going to make you tap just like I made Jey Uso tap. So Jay tired of this. He takes the table and he throws it out of the ring. And he was like, I'm tired of disrespect. He was like, you know what this match needs? It needs a special enforcer. And it's going to be me. And then, of course, Edge's music hits. Edge is like, hey, you own to something, Jay. You own to something. And then he's like, how about next week? Me versus you. The winner becomes a special enforcer for the match at Fastlane. And he was like, that sounds good, doesn't it? And he goes to Adam Pearce and he goes, how about we make that official? What'd you say, Pearce? And Pearce makes it official. For next week, we now have Jey Uso versus Edge. And the winner will be the special guest referee at Fastlane. Now, as this happens and Edge has gotten what he wanted, he goes into the ring and we get a brawl between these 4 of Jey Uso, Roman Reigns, Daniel Bryan, and Edge. And we see Daniel Bryan make short work out of Jey Uso, taking him out of the ring. But as Daniel is looking to go after Roman, we see Edge push him off. And of course, we see Roman get taken out to the outside by Edge. And as Edge is looking to turn to go after Daniel, Daniel hits him with the big knee, leaving Edge on his back. And Roman looking from the ringside area. And Daniel is staring in tall. Now, not gonna lie, this was an intense show. I liked the tag team action. I liked the main event. The Bianca and Sasha stuff, you know, it's a work in progress. But this is nice build going into Fastlane, which is in 2 weeks. Yes, in 2 weeks, where we're going to get 2 huge title matches. Of course, where we get this WWE Women's Tag Team title match. And then, of course, we get the Universal title match. But, of course, we got a lot of stuff to get to in the Go Home show next week. But, of course, you already know what it is. If you guys like the video, hit that thumbs up button right there. If you guys definitely want to keep up with the content we got going on our channel, definitely hit that subscribe button right there. And if you guys want to just reach on out and hit those ceiling, break the glass ceiling, my bad. Go ahead and hit that share button and let people know that y'all enjoy our content as well. And definitely don't be shy in that comment section. Let us know what you guys think of our content. But until next time, I am Kevin Jones, the Disciples of Wrestling. And that was wrestling.